I, 29F, just got back from what was supposed to be my dream honeymoon, only to find out that my ex, Ben, 31M, was secretly trying to sabotage my marriage by hiring a private investigator to spy on my husband, Jack, 32M. What I initially thought was an affair turned out to be a nightmare involving obsession, lies, and more drama than I ever imagined. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but after everything that's happened, I need to get it off my chest. I can't talk to most people in my life about it because it's just so surreal, and it involves some pretty personal stuff. So here it is, my full confession and the craziest few weeks of my life. Let me start with some background. I work as a marketing manager for a small tech company in New York City. I've always been pretty independent, career-driven, and focused on building a stable life for myself. I met my husband, Jack, 3 years ago at a conference for marketing professionals. He works in software development and was attending the same conference as a guest speaker. It was one of those right place, right time moments. We struck up a conversation during one of the coffee breaks, exchanged numbers, and soon after, we started dating. Jack and I hit it off immediately because we had similar values, interests, and career goals. He's ambitious, but also one of the kindest and most supportive people I've ever met. We dated for about a year before moving in together, and I knew early on that Jack was the one. He was attentive, respectful, and most importantly, we communicated well. I had been through enough toxic relationships to recognize that Jack was different. He was honest, and I never felt like I had to second-guess anything with him. Fast forward to last year, Jack proposed to me on a weekend trip to the Catskills. It was nothing extravagant, just the two of us hiking one of our favorite trails when he got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. It was perfect. I said yes immediately, and we began planning our wedding for the following summer. We had a small but beautiful ceremony with close family and friends. Everything about the day felt like a dream come true. I was marrying the love of my life, and I genuinely believed that my past, specifically my relationship with Ben, was behind me. Little did I know, that chapter wasn't closed at all. Now, let's talk about Ben, my ex-boyfriend. We dated for 2 years, and looking back, I realize how toxic that relationship was from the start. When I first met Ben, he was charming, confident, and very attentive. At the time, I mistook his possessiveness for passion and his controlling behavior for caring. Ben and I met through mutual friends when I was 24. He worked in finance, had a high-paying job, and came off as incredibly put together. For the first few months, everything was great. He would take me on expensive dates, buy me gifts, and make grand gestures to show how much he cared. But over time, the cracks began to show. Ben's jealousy became a major issue. He hated that I had male friends, and he constantly accused me of flirting with co-workers or random guys on the street. At first, I tried to reassure him, but nothing ever seemed to be enough. He wanted to know where I was all the time, who I was with, and what I was doing. It was suffocating, but I stayed because I thought things would get better. They didn't. Ben's controlling nature escalated to the point where he would go through my phone, demand access to all my social media accounts, and even show up at my job unexpectedly to check on me. He became emotionally manipulative, making me feel guilty for spending time with friends or even family without him. The final straw came when he started talking about marriage. He wanted to rush into it, and I realized I didn't want to spend the rest of my life feeling trapped and constantly walking on eggshells. So after 2 long years, I ended things with him. It wasn't easy. Ben did not take the breakup well at all. He called me nonstop, sent me long, manipulative texts about how I was making a huge mistake, and even showed up at my apartment unannounced several times. I had to block him on everything and even considered getting a restraining order, but eventually he seemed to move on, or so I thought. After I broke up with Ben, I didn't hear from him for a while. A few months after our breakup, he started dating someone new, and I figured he had moved on with his life. I didn't think about him again, at least not until Jack and I started posting about our engagement on social media. When I first announced our engagement on Facebook, I noticed that Ben had started liking some of my old photos, and even left a comment on one of my posts saying, "Congrats, I hope you're happy." It seemed innocent enough, but it still gave me a weird feeling. I brushed it off, thinking he was just trying to be mature about it. But then, I started getting strange, anonymous messages on Instagram. The messages were vague but unsettling. They'd say things like, "Are you sure you really know him?" Or "Don't rush into marriage." At first, I thought it was some random troll, but the timing made me wonder if it was Ben. Still, I had no concrete proof, and I didn't want to accuse him of something without evidence. I told Jack about the messages, and we both agreed that it was probably just someone messing with me, so we didn't give it much more thought. In hindsight, this was probably when Ben's obsession with me resurfaced, but at the time, I had no idea just how deep it went. After the wedding, Jack and I flew to Bora Bora for our honeymoon. It was supposed to be a week of relaxation, fun, and just enjoying each other's company. The first couple of days were exactly that, pure bliss. We stayed in one of those overwater bungalows, swam in the crystal clear ocean, and indulged in delicious food and cocktails. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. But then, on the third night, Jack started acting off. He was distant, not in a cold way, but more like he was preoccupied with something. When I asked him about it, he brushed it off, saying he was just tired. I didn't push him because I figured maybe the travel and excitement were catching up to him. That night though, I woke up around 2 a.m. to find Jack wasn't in bed. I thought maybe he'd gone to the bathroom or was out on the deck looking at the stars. But when I checked, he wasn't anywhere in the bungalow. I started to panic a little, but then I heard footsteps outside. A few minutes later, Jack came back in, and when I asked where he'd been, he said he couldn't sleep and went for a walk. It seemed reasonable enough, so I didn't question it further. But then, the same thing happened the next night, and the night after that. By this point, I was starting to get suspicious. Jack had never been the type to hide things from me, but this felt off. Why was he sneaking out in the middle of the night? My mind immediately went to the worst possible scenario. Was he cheating on me? On our honeymoon? Of all places? It didn't seem like him at all, but what other explanation was there? By the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on. So, after Jack went to bed early again, I pretended to fall asleep. Sure enough, a few hours later, I felt him quietly get out of bed and slip out of the bungalow. My heart was pounding as I threw on some clothes and followed him. I kept a distance, trying to stay out of sight as I trailed him down the beach. He walked for about 10 minutes until he reached a small, dimly lit bar near the edge of the resort. My stomach dropped when I saw him sit down at a table with another man. At this point, I was convinced Jack was having an affair. Why else would he be meeting someone in secret like this? I stood there, hidden behind a tree, watching them for what felt like an eternity. They weren't doing anything romantic, they were just talking, but that didn't make me feel any better. I had no idea who this guy was, but I knew I had to confront Jack and get some answers. I waited until they both got up to leave the bar, and that's when I made my move. I walked straight up to Jack and demanded to know what was going on. Both he and the other man looked shocked to see me. I was shaking, both from anger and fear of what I might hear. "What's going on, Jack? Who is this?" I asked, my voice cracking. Jack looked like a deer caught in headlights. He opened his mouth to say something, but the other man, the one Jack had been meeting, spoke first. "Hi, I'm Tom," he said, extending his hand. "I'm a private investigator." A private investigator? My mind was reeling. Why would my husband be meeting with a PI in the middle of our honeymoon? Jack finally explained. Apparently, about a week before our wedding, he started receiving anonymous emails from someone claiming that I was cheating on him. The emails included photos of me with male co-workers, old messages between Ben and me, which had clearly been doctored to look recent, and even a fake email supposedly from one of my friends warning Jack not to trust me. At first, Jack didn't believe any of it, but as the emails continued and got more detailed, he started to get paranoid. He didn't want to confront me because he didn't have concrete proof, but the doubt had already been planted. That's when he hired Tom, the PI, to investigate whether I was really cheating on him. Jack said he didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was so convincing that he felt like he had no choice. He didn't tell me because he didn't want to ruin our honeymoon, and he had hoped Tom would give him a definitive answer before confronting me. Tom, the PI, confirmed that he had been following me and Jack for the past few days and had found nothing to suggest I was cheating. He had been doing background checks and even tried to trace the anonymous emails, but they all led back to fake accounts. That's when Tom dropped the bombshell. The person who had hired him to spy on me wasn't Jack. It was Ben.